Welcome to LSB Feaster's Radio Air Check and Classic TV channel.
Welcome back to our tribute to Frankie Crocker on WRKS FM New York. I'm Bob Slade. In the years 1971 through 1974, WBLS slowly became the station Black New Yorkers turned to. It had news and information, pleasant personalities, and a main attraction during afternoon drive, Frankie Crocker. Now, Frankie was hosting concerts as well, making TV appearances, even appeared in movies like Cleopatra Jones. There, he played himself.
Hey, look here, I want you to be here next week because I got a show that's bound to put more dips in your hips, more cut in your strut, and more glide in your strut. If you don't dig it, you know you got a whole show.
And the songs, well, Frankie could smell a hit. The Car Wash soundtrack featured the main title, but after Frankie exposed audiences to other songs on the LP, hits like this one emerged for Rolls Royce. The group Enchantment with Gloria, one of the acts that got major airplay here in New York City, courtesy of Frankie Crocker, a new act at that. Kiss FM's Fred Boggs ought to know about those days. He worked for Frankie in the mid-'70s.
I worked BLS 74, 75, 76. It was my first job in radio. As a matter of fact, Johnny Allen was the guy that made the call and told me that Frankie Crocker needed an engineer. They needed an engineer at the station. He didn't say exactly who it was. He didn't say who it was. And I got to the station, and I had to sit around and watch Frankie work with the engineer that was there, Jay Snyder at the time. And they sat me down and showed me how the guy wants to work. And I became his engineer. He would sit in one room, like Trevor Hollywood is right now. He's in one room, and Frankie, I would be in the next. And I would play all the records. He would communicate via the intercom and going back and forth. I mean, it was an incredible experience because I had been listening to this guy most of my life. I mean, I must have been about like in 4th or 5th grade when he came to New York. And he brought a lot of energy to the radio in New York. We would be in the street playing stickball. And Frankie would come on, and like my boy's mother would put the radio in the window. This is before the portable radio thing, or you would have the 7 transistor, but you couldn't hear that in the street. And the mother would put it in. He would come on with this is the show that's bound to put more dips in your hips, more cut in your strut, more glide in your stride. If you don't dig it, And it was just a whole other thing that we hadn't heard in New York in a while. And it was just the smoothness and the slickness about it. And we would look forward to that opening, and we would look forward to the closing with the Chambers Brothers and Baby Please Don't Go. And he would have the phones ringing and talking to the fictitious girlfriends. Oh, hey, Stephanie, I'll see you at 10:30. But I got to go home, walk the dog. And oh, hey, Gladys, I'll see you at 10:45. Go and walk the dog. I stopped by at 6. And each phone call, there was another chore he had to do that would cause him to get there a little later. But it was just these kind of things that he kind of brought to the kind of radio we listened to, soul radio, where it was a lot of times a lot of guys just talking stuff on the radio. But Frankie kind of brought the theater of the mind to soul radio, black radio at the time, when a young guy like myself could listen to the radio and kind of envision what was how I thought you were envisioning what was going on.
And what was it like working with Frankie?
There was a time we used to play the People's Choice, which was one of the big records, Do It Any Way You Want It. And at the time, the station was located on the 15th floor at 801 2nd Avenue. And we didn't have any carpeting on the floor. It was very poorly insulated. Great facilities, but no insulation. It was basically an office. And what happened while the songs were playing, Frankie's thing was, turn it up so you can feel it. Turn it up so you can feel it. So I'm sitting there patting my foot. While I'm patting my foot, you could hear my foot patting through the turntable on the air. So he was just calling me, Bigfoot's over there patting his foot and blah, blah, blah. And folks would hear that in the streets. And on my way home at night, or when I got back around the way, people were like, I heard Frankie talking about you, Bugs. That was cool. Then I realized, whoa, this is kind of big. This is kind of big.
Did he call you Bigfoot?
No, he called me Bigfoot on the air. I mean, we had fun. I mean, one thing about him, you're going to hear a lot of various stories about him, and people have heard things about the guy. One thing I can always say is that he treated me with respect. He was firm. He was rough on me, but I learned a lot. But he treated me with a lot of respect.
Got to keep those guys and gals in check. Also checking on Frankie in the 1970s was the federal government. Remember that spotlight we talked about earlier? Well, this was a dark period for Frankie, beginning, interesting enough, in 1973, as Frankie and WBLS began their ascension to the top-rated station in the New York market and become the major player in the record industry. In 1973, several federal grand juries in Newark, New Jersey began investigating alleged criminal wrongdoing in the music industry. The investigations concerned reports that illicit cash payments were being made to radio program directors, announcers, and others from a fund created through the use of fictitious companies' padding of convention expenses and the use of independent record promotion men as conduits for those payments. This investigation, by the way, was the second probe of the music and radio industries for what the popular press called payola. Yes. Frankie Crocker was subpoenaed to appear before one of the Newark grand juries on August 16, 1974. He was asked if he had received cash or merchandise from a record company or its representative, and he said no. In August 1975, a promotion man by the name of Rocky G said just the opposite, and so did another witness. Whoops. Frankie Crocker was indicted on May 13, 1976, and he was convicted later in the year of perjury. As a result of his conviction, Frankie was forced to leave WBLS pending his appeal. He was now off the air and facing the prospect of jail. Frankie would eventually appeal his conviction to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Philadelphia. That court reversed Frankie's conviction on November 29, 1977. The court ordered a new trial, and guess what? A great Christmas present came Frankie's way. Eventually, in 1978, the U.S. Attorney's Office said, all right, we're not going to try it. We give up. That's it. And they would not retry Frankie. And this would set the stage for Frankie's return to WBLS and New York radio. And he did it in style. A white horse and a tuxedo at Studio 54. Yes, indeed, Frankie was back. I'm Bob Slade. While Frankie Crocker was away from radio, changes were happening. Disco had emerged as the new musical trend, and there was competition this time around. WKTU was playing dance music 24/7 on the FM dial, and in the fall of 1978, they scored a ratings coup by literally destroying all competition with an astounding 11 share in the ratings. WABC, the longtime ratings king on AM, fell from its perch, as did WBLS, the FM's ratings leader. It dropped to second place from a 7.5 to the threes. Also at this particular point in time, FM had become the dominant bandwidth on the radio dial. From this point on, music would be played mostly on FM, AM would be relegated to talk. Now, with Frankie Crocker free to return, he and management decided to do it in style.
When I first came back to New York, this station here, Inner City Broadcasting Corporation, gave me a party at Studio 54, and I wanted to make a statement about coming back, what I was going to do, et cetera, et cetera. So I rode my white horse into Studio 54. They were playing Hold Your Horses, and I guess that was just a symbol for what we were going to do. And so we came again to give away some more gifts and things. We said we'd do what Frankie Crocker rides again for truth, justice, and the American way.
And Frankie also brought along a new musical trend, rap. One of his favorites, The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. In the early 1980s, there was more competition. WXLO had changed its call letters in August of 1981 to this radio station, WRKS, KISS FM. And Frankie would have to do battle with a young black programmer named Barry Mayo. By 1982, WKTU was dethroned. Disco, for all intents and purposes, was dead. And with upstart KISS trying to catch a hold on the market, Frankie Crocker and WBLS were back on top. Yes, they were number one. And it was time for Frankie to do a little flexing out there. He even tried his hand at singing. Yes, singing. Check this out.
12 shackles to remind me I'm just a prisoner of love. For one command I stand and wait now, from one who's master of my fate now. I can't escape for it's too late now. I'm just a prisoner of love. What's the name?
Well, that's singing for Frankie. He also started a Sunday night entertainment program called Hollywood Live, but low ratings and technical problems caused that show's demise. Now, some folks were starting to see cracks in the Frankie Crocker mystique, especially when he started playing songs like this one.
New York, these vagabond shoes are melting away.
But Frankie Crocker ignored the criticism, and once again, another departure from WBLS, only to return in the late 80s. Here's Imhotep, Gary Bird.
As I indicated to you in the beginning, he is not the suave, slick DJ. It's a completely different image, but he reinvents himself and becomes that. When we look at what occurs when he's at the WMCA situation, he reinvents himself. Okay, what happens at WBLS? He reinvents himself again, and challenge by challenge. Isn't Frankie's career a series of reinventions and comebacks? Reinventions and comebacks. And I mean, each time you think you probably didn't have a move left, he comes back.